What's going on, everybody? It is Chris Moxley at Campus to Canton. We're doing a live basketball. We haven't done one in a little while. It's getting close to the season. I'm not sure that these tournaments are going to fill, so hopefully we can get in, get out, make some money. Today we're going to draft the transfer portal, which the last time that we spoke was not available. It was a $10 contest or a $3 contest. This one is $25. Same structure in terms of roster construction. One quarterback and a super flex, half PPR. Same issues that we've been seeing with the bye weeks, which is week 12 is a playoff week, but it's also a pretty heavy bye week for a lot of college football teams. Week 13 also playoff week, obviously, and you have Oregon, Washington on bye. So a lot of the same issues that we've been facing apply to this as well. Let's see if we can we can hop in one of these contests quick and see how long it takes to fill. Hopefully not too long. If you are watching and following along on YouTube Live, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Let's get this video up to 25, 30 likes while we're live. And then, hey, go gangbusters later for all I care. This has been a lot of fun. It's just me today. I couldn't get the other DGens to take some time out of their days, but they'll be on with me later in the week. I think we'll want to go live every day up till kickoff. Obviously, I think it's smart to max this tournament. Right now, it is 24.7% filled, and we are kicking off on Saturday. So yeah, you run out of time, and I think the right strategy is to max this if you add the funds, of course. You can get up to 10 entries, which I think is part of the reason why it hasn't filled. If you were letting more people max, I think it would fill a lot quicker. But again, this is only 2,200 in the contest. I will start sharing my screen. We're waiting on 5 people, so if you are one of the 5 that would like to join, come hang. It'll be a lot of fun. We'll draft live. We'll talk about some strategy stuff, which we have done in the past. But I think as we know more and we get different strategies from different people, it's given us the opportunity to kind of evaluate a little bit more kind of which direction we want to go, how to build with certain, how to approach the draft with certain builds. So quarterback heavy one early versus waiting significantly on quarterbacks. I think part of the quarterback conundrum, and you see a lot of different people approach this a lot differently, is even if you believe in your heart, which I'm half and half. I think my heart kind of believes this, but I think only to a certain extent. You have to take quarterback early. You can't not take quarterback early. The ADP just doesn't allow you to. So regardless of what you think is the optimal build, you have to adjust. And our rankings, which update daily on Campus Canton, they're available for $2.99. They have 5 weeks, player rankings, team matchups, a schedule matrix color-coded for good and bad matchups, red and green. It's enough to get you started with this draft. I think the biggest question that is going to be is how heavy are people going to go quarterbacks? Because I think in this format versus $3 contest, for example, quarterbacks going a lot earlier. So these contests and tournaments are actually quite different from each other here and there. So I think that's important to note. While we're waiting for people to fill, remember, like, subscribe, get the news out, share this video if you want people to draft and draft along. I don't have people in the chat drafting. While we wait, I'll answer some of the questions in the chat, which are some really good ones, actually. Pushing people to start drafting is killing overlay. Yes, it is, but I think the expansion and growth of college fantasy is honestly more important to Campus to Canton, so I'm going to keep doing it. Sorry. Any news? Any new late sleepers I like with the new buzz? And Colin specifically mentions Noah Rogers and Ryan Williams. Yeah, I think those are 2 guys that I find myself taking in some drafts too. I will pair them with Jalen Milroe. I'll pair Noah Rogers with NC State receiver with Grace McCall. I think those make sense. I think they're great last round guys. I've been taking more Silas Bolden. Earlier on, I was on Matthew Bolden. I just thought he was a better player, but I was wrong. I think Silas Bolden's been awesome at Texas, and I think we probably need to keep adapting. I've moved him up significantly in our rankings to reflect that in the last couple weeks. So no surprise there. I mean, we made the switch on Chris Bell a while ago at Louisville, probably 2 or 3 weeks ago now. But Elliott does his summer school with Cover 3, and I think that gave us a lot of confidence in the Chris Bell situation. To make that switch, so if you've been drafted alongside our ranks, you probably have more Chris Bell than the field, which is awesome, considering Colin Lacey injury. Not awesome for Colin Lacey, sucks for Louisville, but sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles, right? So I am interested to see how Chris Bell's ADP continues to change and whatnot, but he's a guy that I think will. I don't know, you could get him around pick 100. I've seen Colin Lacey go in some of these drafts that I am in. Kind of doesn't make any sense, obviously, with the injury. I don't think you can really draft him if he's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. And even then, we were really confident that he was going to be the wide receiver 1 there. Honestly, the reason that we like the wide receiver 1 so much in that Louisville offense is because the wide receiver 1 from Jeff Brom is kind of fantasy gold. So if you're unfamiliar with the system, he has produced last year Jamar Brash specifically, but over time you can go back to Purdue. It's a very valuable position and something that we need to target heavily. We're still more than 5 people, so I know y'all are out there wanting to join and hang and draft. There is another question for Peter, and this is actually a really good one. I have not done this much lately, but it is a good strategy question. Is there a case for taking 0 tight ends? You're going to get mostly zeros or close to that anyway from tight ends. Meanwhile, you optimize your flex. I think that I have a couple builds that are 0 tight end. Or not 0 tight end, 1 tight end. You have to take 1. But I don't know that you have to take more than 1, for example. Like, I think you can get away with taking 1 for that exact reason. The biggest question that I think will no way, because I promised that we will have a lineup in week 14. I think so too. I don't think you can take 0. I think you take 1 though, because of how variable the position is. To be totally honest, I find myself taking 1 or 2. I don't think you should take more than 2. It would have to be a really unique scenario to take more than 2. I haven't really found it yet, but I some people take 3. I don't. If you're taking more than 3, you gotta know what you're doing. I'm taking 1 or 2, and I'm taking 1 or 2 depending on who the tight end is as well. I thought Grant Keithy falling to picks like 6th round, 7th round sometimes. It's kind of crazy to me that he's going that late, considering the last time we saw him on the field with Utah, he was awesome. He's a great connection with Cam Rising. He's fully healthy, coming off his injury. The ADP difference between him and Rondé Gadsden is probably too much. Gadsden goes in the 3rd, Keithy goes 3 rounds later. I think Keithy's honestly really nice value in the 6-7. So I have a good amount of Keithy. If you're waiting on tight end, which I suggest you do if you don't get 1 or 2 at value, I think you take 2. I like Jack Bailing a lot. The bye weeks work out really nicely for a guy like Jack Bailing. You don't have to worry about the week 12 bye. I don't think you can take a tight end with week 12 or 13 bye and take 1 for sure. Like I just don't think you can take a 0 in your playoff matchups. It doesn't really jive with me, but I think you can take 2. You can try to play that game a little bit better. But my biggest question I think is going to be, I guess Underdog drops the tight end position next year. I hope not. I don't know. I like the tight end position, but I always like the tight end position. I draft a lot of tight ends in my college fantasy leagues, and I think I'm pretty good at identifying tight ends for the most part. Like I think it's something I'm stronger at. But I'm way better at the G5. At the P5, it's harder to sift through these guys because a lot of college offenses just don't use the tight end. You think NFL, for those who are totally unfamiliar with the way college and NFL tight ends differ, you think NFL is bad. College is like 10 times worse. So we're talking about tight end production. So there's a reason why it's not really an optimal position to overload on, and it's not like you get any bonuses for drafting tight end or in terms of are, whatever. So I don't really think that makes a lot of sense either. If we don't get this filled, we're just talking strategy today, by the way. So that'll be fine. And I'd be happy to answer any questions in the comments. But hopefully we get this filled. We don't have to wait too long. What are some other thoughts I've been having recently? Yeah, I think some of the fall news is really important to stay on top of. And that's why, and like, I'm going to toot my own horn or toot our own horn, really. It's a collective effort here on our best ball rankings. But making sure that you have access to rankings that are up to date is really important, considering how much fall news is coming out currently. For example, if you were drafting live and the Cullen Lacey news broke, like, you could get a pretty significant value on Chris Bell. Quarterbacks are being named starters, right? Boise State obviously chose Maddox Madsen over Malachi Nelson, which was a surprise to some. I think the news was kind of already there. Obviously, Boise State. But there are examples like that we need to be paying attention to and make sure our rankings are working correctly. I told my audio is off. Thank you. The comment on the audio, that should be a lot better. I appreciate it in the chat. Does a triple or quintuple stack team win it all? So I have a couple thoughts on stacking, which is yes, thank you. I've been having issues with my mic all day, so I appreciate y'all letting me know. So obviously stacking is optimal if you think you have the right team stack, and something I'm trying to be a little bit more cognizant of is game stack. If you get it right, I think that's probably going to be who wins it all, right? Like the teams in the finals are probably going to be ones who are doing really well in the finals are going to be teams who have chosen the right offenses to stack. I like stacking a pocket passer, obviously, with his receivers. Just the format lends itself to that a little bit better, right? 4 points per passing touchdown. I don't think you need to stack. Like, I don't think you absolutely have to stack and to win. I think it obviously helps, reduces risk. And I think if you reduce risk is good. We're not really trying to reduce risk as much here as we are trying to shoot for upside. And I think stacking does both. I don't think you need to stack, for example, with a player like Garrett Green. Garrett Green's upside is his legs. Garrett Green might throw for 2,000 yards. I don't know that there's a receiver that you want to stack with Garrett Green, though. I think the answer is probably tight end Cole Taylor. And so I look at someone like Garrett Green and I say, well, how am I supposed to approach Garrett Green in the first half of the first round and prioritize stacking him? I think you take the tight end, or you don't have to stack him. His over under on yards is like 2,200. It just doesn't make a ton of sense. Some other situations like that. Avery Johnson, unless you're stacking him with tight end Garrett Oakley, I don't know that makes a lot of sense. I've seen people taking J.C. Brown, Keegan Johnson, those guys. I just don't think the passing upside is going to be there, to be honest. I am highly skeptical of Avery Johnson in general, which is why we're lower on him. Like, right, I have very little Avery Johnson, and our rankings reflect the skepticism around Avery Johnson. I think Kyron Jones is a lot safer and goes after Avery Johnson. Is the upside there? I think so. I think Kyron Jones is very similar upside, actually, to Johnson. Castellanos, I don't think you have to stack him. If you are, you're probably stacking him with Louis Bond. But there are players like that I don't think it's totally necessary, and they're rushing threats, right? So do you have to stack? It's helpful. Do you need to stack? I don't think so. At least to win it all, especially depending on your quarterback build. The other question around stacking that I think is pretty interesting is, in the NFL, there's only 32 teams. I don't watch the NFL a lot, so I apologize if I get that wrong. I think it's 32 teams. So 30 or 32. There's double the field here, in terms of teams you can select from, right? So you can pick and choose pieces of offenses that skew heavily one way or the other, pass run, and make selections based off of that, because college football is so varied, because there's so many offensive approaches, because the player pool is so much larger. I think stacking becomes less important. Like, needing to stack becomes less important. I still think it's valuable. I don't think it's 100% necessary all the time. Have I changed my mind on Will Howard yet? I have not. Did I move him up a little bit? Yes. I don't know. I just don't think he's that good. And Chip Kelly at offensive coordinator tends to make me think that they're going to run more, considering they brought in Quinshon Judkins, who was asking for 7 figures from Ole Miss. And I don't know if I don't know that Ohio State paid him that, but they certainly paid him a lot of money to come there. So I like the Will Howard selection. Let's see where I have him ranked currently. I'm not very high on him. Between Noah Fafita and Preston Stone, 81st overall. I think that's, I don't know. I probably won't get a lot of him at that spot, but I don't think that's unfair. I think the offense, what you're asking Will Howard to accomplish in this offense is difficult, given his skill set. I like the receivers there. I think Emeka Egbuka is really good. I think Jeremiah Smith is really good. I like Carnell Tate. I like Brandon Innes. I like Jaden Ballard. They have a lot of good pieces there. I just don't know the offense is going to be that productive in the passing game because of Will Howard and because of who Chip Kelly is. New offensive coordinator coming in from UCLA. Was the UCLA head coach, by the way, and became the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. So that kind of tells you the direction that UCLA is heading, and Chip Kelly's interest or lack thereof in the recruiting side of football, or college football. Am I skeptical of the transfer receivers? Generally speaking, no, but it depends who we're talking about. So the specific comment refers to Jeremy Bernard, who is at Alabama. He followed Kalen DeBoer. He was at Washington last year. He was kind of the wide receiver 4 that snuck in when the big. So if Rome Odunze missed time, if Jalen McMillan missed time, if Jalen Polk missed time, Jeremy was playing, and he's a good player. I think so. That's how I think we have to approach Jeremy Bernard. Deion Burks does not have familiarity as much with the staff at Oklahoma. He left Purdue. He's a smaller player. I think he's really good. Norman is raving. Everybody around Norman is kind of raving about him. I think he's going to be the wide receiver 1. Deion Burks is one of my most rostered receivers in these underdog best balls. So yeah, I like Deion Burks a lot, but it's highly dependent on the news that you're getting out of camp, which is why I think having up-to-date rankings is so important. If Deion Burks wasn't doing well, we would lower him. But that's not what the news out of Oklahoma is. The news is they love him. He's getting first-round draft buzz. Not sure I believe that. He's on the smaller side. But good player, entering a good situation. And when we saw him healthy in the Purdue offense humming last year, he is pretty darn productive. So I really Burks. Noah Rogers was the third guy named in this question. I touched on him a little bit earlier as like a last round stash guy. I'm in the Raleigh area, right? I could probably see NC State's campus from my house. So I'm pretty into what's going on around NC State just because it's pretty local. People love Noah Rogers. They're really excited about Noah Rogers, what he could do this year. I think he's a good player. I really do. How productive can he be? I don't know. I think he's still the wide receiver 2 to Casey Concepcion. I like the offense a lot. I like their offensive coordinator, Robert Nye, has been extremely productive basically everywhere he's been. And Virginia, by the way, Virginia kicked him and Bronco Mendenhall to the curb for Tony Elliott. So let's not justice for both of those guys. But yeah, I think Noah Rogers is a guy you can take in the last round if you're stacking with Grayson McCall. Absolutely. So I like McCall. I like McCall. I like the offense. I have a ton of Grayson. I have a little bit of Casey Concepcion. But I find myself taking a little bit of Noah Rogers now late in drafts. That is a pretty good question about transfer wide receivers, right? A couple Let's see, a couple other ones. I was taking more Antoine Wells, for example, from Mississippi. He transferred there from South Carolina. He sounds like he's still banged up pretty good, so I've moved on from him. Evan Stewart obviously goes top 20 in these drafts. Really just a good player, period. I'm not afraid of transfer wide receivers, but there has to be buzz. There has to be news. There has to be positive reports coming out of these places to support drafting one of these guys. It can't just be based on faith or what we saw last year. And I think that was what was happening with Cullen Lacey, who was a top 70 pick. We had him up there at the very beginning. Then we started hearing the Chris Bell buzz. Then we started hearing the Ja'Cory Brooks buzz. Where was Cullen Lacey? Cullen Lacey then breaks his collarbone. That kind of becomes irrelevant in the grander scheme of the discussion. But that's a great example of wish casting, I would say, onto a player. Because he had 1,300 yards at South Alabama. South Alabama ain't the ACC, dude, and the ACC ain't even that good. But if he's not standing out at Louisville, then we need to adjust our assumptions, and our assumptions were adjusted. So I have no issue with transfer wide receivers, as long as the buzz is there. That's my big thing. Again, now we're down to 3 people. So if you are wanting to hop in, now's your chance. I think we have, hopefully we get this filled in a minute or two. I'd like to do a live draft with y'all, but discuss some more round by round, pick by pick strategy. But we could go talk any kind of really strategy questions that y'all want that are in the chat. I appreciate that. Keep the content flowing. I missed this question earlier from comment, I guess, from Braden. And it was, I basically said what he was asking, what he was saying, which is a great point, right? He's stacking less in CFB than I am. Same way, right? Player pools feel like it's built to focus on the best player available instead of pushing a stack. I tend to agree, for all the reasons we said earlier, right? The college offenses are so different than the NFL. I don't think you could apply the exact same principles in terms of stacking. Again, is it valuable? Yes. Is it necessary? I'm not totally convinced. Auburn, yeah, I like Auburn a lot, actually. Peyton Thorne's is a player that I find myself taking as my last quarterback because of that ULM matchup week 12. It just is so juicy. And that's a week where you need quarterback production, or you need production, period, for a lot of these teams, because you see 22 or 24 of these teams are on bye week 12. That's week 1 of the playoffs. You need somebody, and having somebody with a juicy matchup like Peyton Thorne and Auburn, like, that's pretty nice. It's also part of the reason why I find myself drafting a lot of Jarquez Hunter, the running back at Auburn. Running back buys are really tricky to navigate. I think a lot of the top guys have tough buys to maneuver around. That makes me a little more excited to draft a guy like Jarquez Hunter, despite not really knowing exactly what the Auburn offense is going to do in year 2 under Hugh Freeze. And listen, I'm surprised they didn't go out and get a quarterback in the portal. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, Jack with another great one in the chat. Kentucky gets Murray State. I've been taking a lot of Brock Vandagriff, the same way I'm taking Peyton Thorne, right? Those are the guys that I want to be taking, and hopefully, they pay off in those weeks. And there was some pushback actually earlier in the offseason, like a month or so ago, about some of these players saying, hey, well, can you really draft them if we think it's going to be a blowout? Like, Kentucky's going to be favored by 40 against Murray State. Auburn might be favored by like 30 plus against UL Monroe. Maybe more. But I am on the of the opinion that, for the most part, when the scoring gets so big and those margins get run up so high, it's the starters and the really quality players that you're drafting, the one doing that running up. Yeah, they might get pulled in the second half, but they might have 300 yards and 4 touchdowns before we even get there. And I think that doesn't deter me as much as I think it deters some people. Luke Altmaier, we got great names in the chat. Thank you, everybody. He's got good bye weeks and gets Central Michigan, Purdue, Mississippi State, or Michigan State at home. on those 3, 7, 12 buys, which are basically like the toughest bye weeks to navigate in this format. Northwestern week 14. Yeah, Altmaier's good call. They don't have another guy there that's looking to take Altmaier's job, despite how what people might think of some of the incoming quarterback talent there. What else do we got? Any cold weather week 14, 13 situations? I don't know. I almost think that's probably overthinking it, to be honest. I haven't really thought about the weather late in the season, but yeah, I don't think it's something that I'm impacting. There are a lot of other things that I think you need to control for before we get there to weather. So it's a good question, for sure. But the way the tournament's set up makes it challenging. Ben also asked about Nussmeier. So Nussmeier is one of my top rostered quarterbacks, and I understand the lack of rushing upside he has. I do think he's mobile. I don't think he's like Jane Daniels, obviously. But he's I think how you feel about Garrett Nussmeier is gonna be one of the big questions in this tournament. Like, if you're higher on him than the field is, I think that's gonna be a good thing. I really do. I buy into Garrett Nussmeier. I'm sitting here with a first overall ticket in my back pocket from, I don't even know, March, February. He could throw for 4,000 yards, 40 touchdowns. The receivers aren't as good. That's more the concern than the rushing is, right? Kyron Lacy, CJ Daniels, Chris Hilton, it's a step down from Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. just is. I still think Nussmeier is a really, really good player, though. I think generally you're going to be pretty happy to have Garrett Nussmeier. I much prefer Garrett Nussmeier to Brady Cook, to be totally honest. I think the ceiling is substantially higher for Nussmeier, specifically, and I think our rankings certainly reflect that. Brady Cook goes really high in ADP, and I'm not really there. The other player that goes really high in ADP that I don't quite get, speaking of Missouri, is Theo Weiss. Like, what is Theo Weiss doing in the top 110 picks? I don't think the upside's there for him. First of all, he's not going to have massive games because he's Luther Burden. Like, your path to Theo Weiss outperforming is essentially Burden getting hurt, which, like, I don't really like to bet on that when I'm taking a guy as my wide receiver 3 or 4. I want a guy who can lead the team. For example, the ADP difference between Daniel Jackson, the Minnesota wide receiver 1, and Theo Weiss is significant. It's like 30 spots, and I easily have those two reversed. It's not even close for me. All right, we got 2. Waiting on 2. Maybe we'll send out the Twitter bat signal again. Let the people know that we're trying to get this draft up and off the ground. Although I am enjoying the questions y'all are asking. I think there's some really good ones. And I think having a space to bounce some of these ideas off is really important. So I appreciate the chat for sure. And if you're enjoying just this, frankly, conversational approach, make sure that you are liking and subscribing to the channel. We're going live basically every week before the season, or every day before the season, with some form of content, right? Felix was live yesterday talking about a couple different things, a lot of news breaking and whatnot. So we're trying to get as much content around college football, college fantasy out there as possible. And the growth is just the growth that we've seen is kind of unbelievable. To be frank, I think you're seeing a lot of people really excited about the direction that college fantasy is heading, and you see a lot of people talking about it more. So we're trying to do our best, which, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Where do we take Chris Bell now? So I tweeted about this when the injury broke to Cullen Lacy. We have had him ranked at about I think 54th overall for, I don't know, like 2 weeks. That's a reflection of wanting the Jeff Brown wide receiver 1, but also to the news that I felt, and I think a lot of people felt, based on the buzz that was coming out, it was Chris Bell, the one that you wanted for the wide receiver 1. So he was up to 54. That was my assumption. I didn't change his ranking when Cullen Lacy went out. In fact, the only ranking I changed was moving Cullen Lacy and Ja'Cory Brooks up a little bit. I think the biggest reaction is maybe putting Mark Redmond into your tight end, end of round tight end queue. I think he could have a productive year if the target share is pretty narrow. But to be totally honest, the news out of camp hasn't really been great for the wide receivers at Louisville in general. Chris Bell is a true sophomore. I think he could be pretty good. So I have him top. Where do we take him is a good question, though, because if you've been drafting off our rankings, you probably noticed that he goes about 40 spots after where we have him ranked. And you could play the ADP game for a while. I don't know you can still play the ADP game with him. I think you could take him in the 6th round, though. Like where you were taking Colin Lacey is the spot where you would take Chris Bell. I don't think that really changes. And I think Colin says he's 50% Chris Bell shares. Yeah, he's one of my most rostered players as well. My exposure is very high to Chris Bell for all the same reasons that we're talking about. Rusty, who is in our Discord at Campus Can, which is, I don't know, I love the Discord and interacting with folks and talking trash and whatnot. It's just a fun place. But it's a really good question. Why ADP is inefficient, and how far you're willing to reach in a player versus trying to push them and get a better value closer to ADP. So a couple things. In my opinion, ADP is extremely inefficient in these drafts. There are a lot of people coming from a lot of different angles to these tournaments. I think you're getting some people from the NFL side. I think you're getting people who largely play DFS. You're getting people who largely play college fantasy. And it's all coming together in a cosmic gumbo. And so I wonder what exactly that means in terms of what the winning tournament lineups look like, right? I don't think ADP is efficient because our rankings are so far off ADP. So if I think our rankings are off ADP, that means I don't think ADP is doing a good job. And it's not the 3 or 4 spots that we're off. Sometimes we're off 4 or 5 rounds in ADP versus rankings. And I don't think we have to be apologetic for that because I don't think some of the players that I see go in drafts at their ADP, I say I wouldn't take this player within 4 rounds before they're coming. A lot of it is strict adherence to underdog ADP, which I think is a knowledge question. How knowledgeable are you about the game of college football? And what teams are going to do well, what players are going to do well? I think you have to be consuming a lot of news and information and be really, really tied to the ground on that, or have your ear to the ground on that one. I think the team at Campus Canton does a really good job of that. And there's a lot of people who do a good job of that. Fantasy Points does a great job of that. ETR does a great job of that. There's a lot of people who do a really good job of that. The drafters don't necessarily reflect that. Unless you are in what I consider a sharper league, right? Or a sharper draft. And I think these $25 ones have been sharper. So how long do I want to play the ADP game on somebody? Chris Bell was easy because nobody's taking Chris Bell. Where we had him ranked, you could wait at least 2 rounds on him. Now that I know he's going, his ADP is going to rise, and if people are paying attention to the news, that he will he should go round 6. I will take him there. That's where I have him ranked, right? I don't always take him there because I think there's some other values, and he doesn't always go there either. So am I willing to play the same level of game of waiting 4 rounds? No, but I could still probably wait a little bit because I think myself, the Campus Canton rankings are higher even to where the rest of the field is post Colin Lacey news. So I think I can wait a little bit. And what makes rankings inefficient is I don't think it reacts and adjusts to news properly or information gained. I'll talk about the Colorado players, right? Shadur Sanders is on our thumbnail for this video. Call that engagement farming. Shadur Sanders, Travis Hunter go too high in ADP. They just do. I just don't think Shadur Sanders should be a second rounder. I think that's a lot of name value. I don't think that's reflective of where his ADP should be. For example, I am in a ton of college fantasy drafts every single year, and nobody that kind of that is really in the weeds with college fantasy is currently taking Shedeur Sanders there. That doesn't mean we're right? We could all be wrong on this, and the publicity and the hype around Shedeur Sanders is legit. A lot of college fantasy people don't think so. There's a couple reasons why that is. One is the first 8 games of the season, Sean Lewis was the offensive coordinator, and they were awesome. Sean Lewis runs a very pass-heavy, veer and shoot scheme that makes quarterbacks look great, makes receivers look great, very productive offense. He's not there anymore. He's the head coach at San Diego State now. That's a massive downgrade for the passing offense. I don't like the way that they're trending in terms of pass run splits from where they were the first 8 games of the season. And they played bad. They did not play well down the stretch. If you look at the last 4 games of the season, it was not a prolific passing offense. So I think that matters a lot more than what we saw at the beginning of the year with Colorado. If that's true, then they're certainly being overdrafted. I think the answer is probably somewhere in the middle, to be totally honest. But somewhere in the middle is not a top 24 selection at quarterback for Shedeur Sanders because he doesn't have rushing ability. There's a better chance he finishes with negative rushing yards than positive rushing yards. He takes a lot of sacks. Sacks count against rushing as negative rushing yards in college. That's why I don't think ADP is overall efficient. The L instead of the captain's badge was a nice touch. So I actually had to look into this a little bit because I was like, there's no way that he has an L on his jersey right there instead of a C, right? And I when I was pulling the image, and it's an image I think we've used a couple times, I thought it was legit. I thought it was legit, made up. I thought somebody photoshopped it, right? It stands for leader. It's real. There's not a C. It's an L. It stands for leader. But having an L on your jersey and all the marketing and all the hype around Colorado, not a great look, right? Not an amazing look when you're losing and flashing your watch at people. I think they also have D on their jersey, and it's for dogs. It's not really sure what that's about. If I was Dion, I would probably put a C on these players' jerseys. I would not keep an L on my starting quarterback's jerseys when we're projected to possibly make a bowl game, possibly miss a bowl game. Seems counterproductive. So yeah, I find that hard to believe. But it's real, and I was trust me, I was just surprised as y'all. Yeah, Hunter has a D. Hunter's got the dog. It's I don't know. It's just not what I would do if I was head coach. I understand that it's different and unique, I guess, but don't really like the idea of having an L on my starting quarterback's jersey when we, especially post that Stanford game. Bad time to have an L on your jersey. Just saying. So hopefully they change that this year. I don't know that they will. I haven't looked, but it could be. It's not photoshopped. It could be a problem. We're still waiting on 2. We might just not fill today, which is fine. We'll come back tomorrow and do this right. But if y'all have any more questions in the chat, I think we'll just stick with that instead, and then we'll come back and do this tomorrow, which will be fun. I enjoy talking strategy wise and whatnot. I think tomorrow we'll talk probably a little bit more about playoff stacks. That's kind of what I was going to do today in practice, but I think it's a good conversation for the rest of the week to really talk about, because I think there's some teams you really want to be targeting, and we have some great articles in the site, by the way. Chris K wrote about matchups for week 12, matchups for week 13, matchups for week 14, the playoff weeks. And it's funny, one of those matchups that I think is worth targeting is the Colorado State or Colorado or Oklahoma State matchup. I think that could be a very high scoring game. And Alan Bowman's a guy that I really like. I find myself drafting a lot of Brennan Presley for the Cowboys too. So I really do like having Oklahoma State on my team. The problem is Colorado goes so high. So I have a little bit of Colorado. Yeah, I do. But I that's me purposely going out getting Colorado. It's not me taking Colorado at ADP. Like I am personally making the conscious decision to draft a player and team over where I have them ranked because of A, that matchup, and B, what if I'm wrong? Right? Like I we're not infallible. College fantasy production is extremely difficult to predict. In fact, like 33% of players that are drafted in top 20, 33% of players drafted in the top 36 at their respective position will finish there. That's 12 out of 36. That's not a lot. We're very bad at predicting year-over-year production. And we've gotten better, actually, over time. That number's close to like 40% now. Before I did that study like 2 years ago. It's just difficult. Tight end's the toughest. Quarterback, which is part of the reason why I like round quarterback. A lot of productive quarterbacks go late and find themselves in the like as a productive player. They outperform based on certain metrics. So I think you see a couple of those this year. I think Alan Bowman is one of them. Alan Bowman threw for a lot of yards, didn't have a lot of touchdowns. What if the touchdowns match the yards? Quarterbacks in college throw for a touchdown every about 150 yards. Bowman was way lower than that last year. So could he rebound? Yeah, I think that's certainly possible. So we won't draft today. Again, these tournaments are taking a while to fill, which is great if you're part of the overlay. Awesome if you're if you're one of the entrants and we get like 60% fill. Not as awesome for the tournament in general, non-underdog people. But the contest was announced 10 days before lock. You can only max 10, right? If I could max more than 10, me and probably a lot of other people would have significantly more entries. So it's it'll be interesting to see where it gets to. I do think we're going to see the transfer portal one, which is the $3 contest fill. That's been filling a lot quicker because we now have this one. So you don't have to you have different options now to max and treat your lineup construction a little bit differently. Like that wasn't your only option. So we're seeing that fill at a lot quicker rate. Automatic. Me too, man. Talking about his highest exposures. Justin Jolly. I really like pairing him with Grayson McCall. I'm not like this Jolly truther in terms of like what his potential looks like at the next level, but he was a really good player for Connecticut last year. Is going to be the tight end one for Robert and I in that North Carolina State offense. So yeah, I like him. Cedric Irvin is like I talked more than I need to about Cedric Irvin on these airwaves. Ryan Butler's playing a role at Stanford camp, but I just think Irvin's like the much more explosive back. I think he's going to be the one who gets explosive touches. And Butler's a fine player, but like last year he wasn't very good, and I wasn't super impressed with him at Princeton either. And then we're going in the FCS weeds. We don't need to do that. But yeah, he's not my favorite guy. I much prefer Irvin in that Stanford backfield. McCall, yeah, we've a lot of NC State talk today. See, we got my NC State hat around here somewhere. I do. Here we go. Got my NC State Creamery. They have a creamery that they have, Howling Cow. So got to rep my Wolfpack. And then Chris Bell, yeah, another player that we really like. Who do you dislike in that group relative to ADP? Probably like I just talked about how much I like Justin Jolly. But he goes kind of early. I prefer Jack Veiling, for example, and he goes later than Jolly does. If I don't, again, and I mentioned this at the beginning, so if you're coming on later, totally fine. I like getting one of the top two tight ends, Rhonda Gadsden or Brant Keithy. Gadsden goes round 3, Keithy goes round like 6, sometimes round 7. Makes it very challenging. If I don't get one of those guys, I will wait. I will probably wait till around like 14, maybe. I like drafting Jack Veiling, tight end at Michigan State, coming over with Aiden Childs, coming over with Aiden Childs, coming over with Jonathan Smith from Oregon State. Familiarity with the offense, right? Yeah, it's getting tight end right is probably really important in these drafts. So if you feel very confident about somebody, take them. Like, what does ADP matter? We just had this whole conversation about how ADP is inefficient anyway. Yeah, if you like Justin Jolly and you think Justin Jolly can be a 700-yard tight end, 8 touchdowns, 9 touchdowns, take him. Take him. Like the offense is going to be good. I really like what they're putting together for the Wolfpack. Lukash, hurt at the beginning of the season last year for Arkansas as a true freshman, but was awesome when we saw him. I think he's going to have a nice year as well. That's fine. I am not going to argue with you on taking your guys, especially with ADP set up how it is. No problem there. Missouri running back, dude, I have no idea what to do, Ben. Lots of yards, lots of touchdowns. Is taking both viable? I find myself hard pressed to find a situation where I want to take both players at a certain position on a team, outside of wide receiver, right? I don't think you should take the same quarterback. Some people were taking John Mateer and Zevi Eckhouse earlier. I think Mateer is going to be announced as a starter. Hasn't come out yet. It's supposed to come out today if you're listening on Monday, the 19th. I don't know. I don't think you should be doing that. I think it's extremely non-optimal. I understand the argument for the Missouri running back, though. Eli Drinkwitz running backs are basically cash. We've had like 4 or 5 years of really good production now. Tyler Batty, Cody Schrader, like these are guys who just significantly outperformed not only their ADP, but like they were one of them. They were like top 5 running backs in the country. I find it difficult to roster both. Marcus Carroll's guy coming in from Georgia State, really productive last year. It's a big step up though in competition to Missouri from Georgia State. Nate Noel played a little bit tougher competition. Like App State schedules are pretty like generally speaking stronger out of conference and are a better group of 5 team. Like Georgia State did pretty well under Sean Elliott, but like that's not a really competitive team. Generally speaking. So I lean Noel, but they're back to back in the ranks. I think you take one and just hope that you get the right guy. Like that's the way. Because how many lineups are going to be in the tournament? One's 11,000, one's 2,200. Like I don't think it's optimal to take both. I think taking one is fine and banking on the one that you like. To me, the answer is Nate Noel. Some people like Marcus Carroll more. That's fine. Some people even like the true freshman Kewan Lacey. I wouldn't take him, but there are people who like him. So not my strategy, but I understand the question and why. There's a lot of available yards. They lose a lot with Cody Schrader off to the NFL, for sure. I tend to think it's going to be more running back by committee with Noel Carroll leading it, and then I think Lacey does play a role. Really talented true freshman going in there. Missouri's done a really good job recruiting in general. They got some cash there in Columbia. I think we'll wrap it up here, guys. Sorry we couldn't get a draft in. It's just, they take a while to fill in the middle of the day, college football. It is what it is. Some people can't max, and I think you're going to see overlay in this tournament, which is great for us, right? So if you've enjoyed this is honestly more of a Q&A than anything, and I enjoy doing it. I hope you all enjoyed it as well. Make sure that you're liking, subscribing, following what we do at Campus Can. We're trying to keep y'all up to date. We have the rankings, the schedule matrix on the site. Those are updated with news as it comes out. When we get the John Mateer announcement or Zevi Eckhouse announcement later today at Washington State, our rankings will reflect that as well. But yeah, just make sure you're following Campus Can. We have a promo code if you haven't gotten into your Underdog drafts yet, too. If you're waiting and you're saying, I'm not really sure, you join the $3 draft, very low stakes. Promo code C2C, first time deposit match of $250. I think you could do a lot worse if you're looking to just test the waters a little bit. They're a lot of fun, generally speaking. So we'll wrap it up here, and we will be back tomorrow. Hopefully we get a draft in, and I will catch y'all guys later.